Hi, everyone. David Amado here, music director of the Atlantic Classical Orchestra, and I am joined today by our soloist for our concerts in April 10th and 11th, the wonderful organist, Andrew Galuska. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be with you and so looking forward to April.
Oh, it's going to be great fun, and what a rare and special opportunity to be able to play an organ concerto,
Yeah,
especially on that lovely organ at the community church,
it's
where
it's
you
going to
were
be
such a
spectacular.
successful director there for a
Thank you.
long time.
Yeah,
So it'll be a little
almost
bit of
eight
a
and a half
homecoming for
years.
you. Yeah,
Yep. It'll be good to see old friends and also to play on that wonderful instrument.
yeah. So
But
we're doing this Parker concerto,
yeah,
which
and have you ever done it before?
I've never done it. In fact, I have never done an organ concerto.
Wow, so this
Isn't
is
that
going to be my
crazy?
first.
Yeah, the only time I've done well, no, I've done things with organ. So I've done, Sanson Organ Symphony, and
Sure.
I did church windows.
Yep.
But I've never done a sort of dedicated
Yeah.
concerto, organ concerto. So that will be
And what
lovely.
a concerto. I mean, it's a wonderful piece of literature that we
It's
don't
a
know
great
about that
piece.
much. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, my impression um, from my sort of narrow corner of the universe is that it's hard to get organ repertoire kind of in the mainstream just
sure.
because it's an organ. like like it's not, a lot of people have pianos in the house.
Mhm.
In the fourth grade, when everyone chooses an instrument, rarely is organ among the things one can choose. I mean, it's just it's a rarefied thing.
You can't pack it up and take it with you. That is true. But when it is combined with orchestra, it is spectacular.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, he's Horatio Parker was as much a pedagogue
Right.
as he was a composer.
Yeah.
And in fact, we spend our summers in a little town on the coast of Maine called Blue Hill, and there's the sort of the ritzy part of town is a road called Parker Point, and that's Horatio Parker. He also spent his summers in Blue Hill, Maine, where he would bring his piano up on a steamship.
I love it.
Yeah, so it has a particularly personal resonance with me.
Yeah.
Um, but the piece, it's a I think it's a really interesting and compelling piece. It's curious that it's written for the forces that it's written for. Right?
Yes. Well, I think it's his teacher who was Reinberger's influence on him. If you
Just
look at
the
some of the Reinberger organ concertos, very similar instrumentation.
right. So brass and
Yep.
strings,
Yep.
and I think that avoiding the woodwinds, I think
Letting
is
the
a
organ be the woodwinds. Yeah.
right is very smart. I can imagine that it could also I I mean, of course, I don't know this, and you look at pieces like church windows or the Sanson. Of course, they're woodwinds, but I think that you're avoiding potential intonation pitfalls,
Correct.
um,
Yep.
just and timbral interference. Yeah, I think it's a very clever piece, a thoughtful piece.
Also, you forgot one of my favorite instruments that he added to it,
Harp,
harp. You knew it.
yeah,
You knew
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Especially in the first movement, the slow section at the
yeah,
end, where we have the solo violin, the solo French horn, harp, and organ come together in
yeah.
this amazing quartet in the middle of this concerto. It's wonderful.
It's gorgeous, and it has this. I think that pop culture has led us down this path where those are the sort of the sounds of the winged musicians of the heavens, and it really works. It
Yes,
kind of is.
it really does work.
Yeah,
That's as I've been studying it and practicing. That slow movement does take me to heaven.
yeah.
And I hope
It's
for our listeners that we will be able to accomplish that for them as well.
yeah. I know. I think it will. I mean, I think it's a very special piece, and I'm glad that you brought it to my attention. I mean, it was not on my radar at all. I mean,
Yep, it's
and
always
and
one I've
it's
wanted to perform.
and I'm so glad that you brought it up. So it's going to be really, I think, a lovely, lovely experience. I mean, one of the things that I think many of our patrons are probably wondering is that in Vero, uh, there's this absolutely lovely organ at the community church. And at the Lyric Theater in Stuart, there is not an organ.
Right.
And so I'm sure everyone is wondering what on earth we're going to do.
Well, thank God for modern technology. We are bringing in a digital instrument provided by Central Music in Clearwater, Florida. As a matter of fact, on Thursday, I'm going to go, and it's not too far away, maybe about an hour and 20 minutes from where I am right now in Sarasota. And I'm going to go check out the instrument that will be there. And so it is a digital computer organ. It mimics the pipe organ very well. Everything is sampled into a computer, sampled from a real pipe organ, real pipe. So they take a pipe and record it and then reproduce it digitally, and it's pretty close. It
Yeah,
it can mimic very well the organ. So I'm
yeah,
excited
that's
about
great.
that too. It's a wonderful
Does
way
it
for me.
does it feel different from a tactile standpoint?
Not really. If it were, if we only had there are kind of two mechanisms for organ, something we call a tracker instrument, which is actually physically connected to the keys. So there are
Right.
pieces of wood that are physically connected. Yes, if we were only dealing with tracker instruments these days, it would feel different. But we have modern pipe organs that are just connected electronically. So it feels exactly the same.
That's great.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
And then I presume there's a kind of a speaker array that's
Oh, yes. You
yeah,
will
that's
feel the rumble and the
yeah,
magnificence of the organ that's why it's called the King of Instruments.
right. No, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, the one of the sort of defining appeals of an organ is that sense of being inside the instrument. That's being immersed by the sound. And so, the notion, for example, it's one of the things that I object to about clavinovas, this
Yeah,
piano,
yeah. Hmm.
which feel good and have sampled piano sounds, sounds like piano,
Yep.
but the sound all comes from one place, and that's not the way a piano is.
Right.
And so, the idea of having a kind of a broad speaker array for an organ to mimic that kind of all encompassing surround sound,
Yes.
I think is really important. It's what we used to do in St. Louis. I mean, there was no organ in Powell Symphony Hall, so every time we
Exactly.
did anything with organ,
It was a
that's what
digital.
we did. Yeah,
And we're going to be able to recreate that experience at the Lyric Theater.
yeah.
Uh, so yes, if you can make Vero Beach, yes, you will be hearing a real pipe organ. But if you can't make that concert, the Lyric Theater is going to be just as spectacular.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be wonderful. I mean, when it comes to because I know organs, every organ is different. Um,
Every organ is different.
so when it comes to playing a performance on the organ at the community church versus on the digital organ at the Lyric, are there are there are there compromises that you need to make in one place versus the other in terms of what the instruments have to offer? Are the things you're looking forward to in each instrument?
Yep,
That
I think that's one of the great aspects of being an organist is every organ is different. So you walk into a place and you go, "Wow, this is my menu for today." And tomorrow it's going to be a completely different menu. Yes, it will be similar, of course, because he does put some organ registrations in the score, and we will follow that on both instruments. But the tonal colors of the two instruments will be completely different. So
yeah,
it's
right.
new all the time and very exciting.
Right. No, that's great. Why don't you, I mean, if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about notions of registration, what it means,
Sure.
what Parker talks about,
Sure.
what he leaves up to you, and how much latitude you feel you have.
Sure. So in the organ world, the art of what we call registration, you've seen organs. There are these wonderful knobs that you pull out. That's our color palette, if you will. And registration, organ registration, is the art of combining those colors together. Uh, so you can think of it almost as an artist palette. I have a yellow, I have a blue, I have a red. Now let's take a little of each and combine them together. That's organ registration. Every organ, even though they may say a stop is a trumpet stop, it still has a distinct color, instrument from instrument. So what I do is I go in and I listen to every stop solo, and then I think, okay, this trumpet will combine with this sound, flute, diapason, which is an organ stop, better than community church. So that's what registration is. Horatio Parker only marks several registrations in the score. Solo flutes, some strings, full organ, tutti organ, which is the best thing I can relate that to for someone who is not familiar with the organ is the phrase pulling out all the stops. That's where it comes from. Pulling out all the sounds, the stops, which are those white knobs on the organ, to create the full organ, that amazing, commanding sound that only the organ can produce. So that's the art of registration. Of course, if you want to come to Vero Beach, you will hear some organ registration done on that pipe organ. And then if you want to come to the Lyric Theater and hear what we do with the digital organ too, it'll be two totally different experiences. So I suggest going to two concerts. How's that, David?
That's awesome. Thank you. So, how, maybe this is a little bit too into the weeds, but the organ's been around a long time. And notions, yeah, I mean, really a long time.
Yeah, the hydraulics.
The notion of tuning has changed a lot over the last. I mean, we talk about it since ancient Greece, but let's, for convenience sake, let's talk about it. Notions of tuning over the last 300 years.
Okay.
So how does that work, and what? Because I know there's still a lot of organs that were made in the 18th century, probably 17th century, in Europe, that were clearly tuned in ways which would maybe today not be recognized as particularly versatile or functional tunings.
Correct.
And how is that managed? And is the organ in Vero tuned? How is that tuned? And is the digital organ able to be tuned in a way that makes you comfortable, that matches the Vero organ, or is it something completely different? Does it come already with its own tuning?
Sure. So the organ in Vero is a wonderful example of a French Romantic instrument, and that would have been A440. So we don't have to worry about any tuning there. Yes, it will, because it is a living, breathing instrument, meaning it is made of wood and metal, which expands and contracts. It is alive. There could be some sharp and flatness to it, but that comes with the instrument. The digital organs, believe it or not, you can tune it to anything you want. So if you wanted a Baroque tuning on a digital organ, you can do that. If you wanted a mean tone tuning, you could do that. For our purposes, we are using the A440 tuning.
Right. So, but beyond the A440, I mean, is the organ in Vero? I mean, is it equal temperament? Is it?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. All
Okay.
equal temperament. And
So,
so,
because that's a relatively new conceit. I mean, in the history of the world.
correct. Yeah.
Um,
Late Baroque. Yep.
so, I mean, maybe it's worth just a five. Do you want to venture a 5-second thumbnail of equal temperament? You want me to do it?
Why don't you
I
do it?
think
Yeah.
they're 12 pitches, right? I mean, and then they recycle, chromatic scale, right? You get back to where you started, and you can manage to. I haven't thought this through, but you can manage to get all 12 pitches by stacking certain intervals on top of each other, and eventually you get back to the beginning. Those intervals are fifths, I mean, or fourths.
Yep.
Let's talk about fifths because it's convenient. Um, a fifth is the second partial, is that right? Third partial. Um, which means that when a column of air or string vibrates, it vibrates like a jump rope, but it also vibrates like you swung, done this with jump ropes, and you get waves in it. So each of those kinds of waves are different partials. And if it vibrates in two parts, it's going to be a higher frequency. And the first frequency that's not the same as the fundamental is that fifth. So if you match up all these fifths with their fundamentals, and you go 12 cycles, you get back to where you started, except you don't get back to where you started. You end up a little bit off in a distance that Pythagoras actually discovered and called the Pythagorean comma. So now, for some reason, you've got this gap. Things are really out of tune. So equal temperament means you take that margin of error and you distribute it evenly amongst the 12 pitches, so that nothing's really in tune, but also nothing's really out of tune either.
Out of tune, yes.
So, and for me, I hate equal temperament. I hate it. I hate it with a passion, but it's the only practical solution.
I agree. I agree.
So, I mean, what it means is that E major sounds just like D major.
Right.
It sounds just like every other major.
That was never the intent.
That's exactly right. So Bach and his well-tempered clavier, these two books of preludes and fugues, he doesn't say the equal-tempered clavier. He says the well-tempered clavier, which means that the tuning system works out so that Pythagorean comma is taken care of, but it's not taken care of equally amongst the 12 pitches.
Right. So everything sounds the same. Right.
Right. So some things are crunchy, some things are not. So and everything has so much more personality, and it just makes me sad when I hear.
So shall we retune the instruments for the Horatio Concerto?
No, but I just wish I just wish that there was a. I mean, we can't change this. The whole world does this, but it just is. It seems like it just seems too bad. I mean,
I agree, because D major should not sound like E major.
No, and when you say D major, there's a certain set of things that explode in my head that are different from E major.
Yeah.
So, and that's what's nice about an orchestra, because an orchestra is not equal tempered.
Correct. And also, I can say the same thing about a pipe organ too, because if you think about it, there are 4,000 to 6,000 pipes. Each one of them cannot be perfectly in tune all the time.
Right.
So there is some variant there.
Right. Right. And I mean, I don't know if it's intentional or whether it's just a happy accident, but that one of the things that I find so appealing about organ sound is that kind of potential for that shimmer. That comes from things that are slightly off.
That's correct.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we will hear that in the Parker Concerto. He does call for some registrations that use the string stops. It's called the voix céleste. And it's intentionally 2 pipes per note that are detuned with each other to give it that shimmer.
It's so lovely.
And also, for the digital organs, they build that into the pipes. So it's not all the same. So it doesn't sound all the same. The program that they wrote into the sampling detunes certain pipes at certain times. So it gives that effect. It's really cool.
That's so wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think there's so much emphasis on notions of intonation. I mean, we talk about intonation as a kind of as a fact. Like things are that's in tune or that's not in tune, and sometimes that's absolutely the case. But they're depending on the context, depending on the tuning system, depending on how you want to distribute that Pythagorean comma. The notions of what it is to be in tune vary a lot. I mean, I think you could probably make a reasonable argument that orchestras are, I guess they practice just intonation, right? The intervals are always pure given the opportunity, right?
Yes.
So because everyone can adjust the nanometers they need to adjust to make that moment in tune, which is also kind of special. But
it is, but I think it's also special to kind of break that a little bit too, and give you a little bit of crunch, maybe where you're not expecting it.
Right. Sometimes that crunch in orchestra happens happens inadvertently. I mean, some things are just very hard to tune. Like diminished chords just always sound crunchy.
Yeah.
So,
Which I
but
hope
yeah,
they would, though. It's a
right,
very powerful
right.
chord.
But everyone has to be in the same crunch level.
I get it.
Like
Yes. That's the hard
uh,
part.
right. And we're beginning this program with a piece that was originally written for organ.
I've played
So
it
that's
most of my life. Yes.
yeah. So that should be fun
Variations on
too.
America.
Yep, by Charles Ives, who was he not a student of
He
Parker?
was. He was a
Yeah.
student. Yeah. Hmm.
So that's kind of cool. And it's been
Um,
arranged for orchestra by William Schumann, the great American
which
composer.
you can never go wrong with
Yeah.
William Schumann. I think the program that you have put together, also including the Enigma variations at the end, and yes, we will use the organ
Oh,
on
excellent. Yeah.
the final variation as well. So we'll be all on stage for that last bit. You don't get to hear the organ part in the Enigma variations that often at all. It's a small part, but let me tell you, it's going to be extremely effective, and I'm excited
Yeah.
to do that.
I can't wait. Yeah. I mean, it's a great piece. And it's one of the things I love about this program is how, in a way, how personal each piece is. I think that when you look at music from the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, there's a level of there's a sense of posterity
Yes,
that that accompanies all of the Beethoven symphonies, for example. Yes, of course, you hear Beethoven, and in that respect, it's personal. But you have the sense that he's writing for the future, that he's
correct.
writing for something else. And I think that with these American variations, with this Parker Concerto, and certainly with Enigma, there's a level of just people doing it for themselves,
Yeah,
which I think is really, for me, very appealing. I mean, I like that level of intimacy.
me too.
So
Me
yeah,
too. Especially with a concerto, like I said, I've always wanted to play this concerto for many, many, many reasons. Uh, Reinberger is a favorite of probably any organist, and to see the influence that Reinberger had on this, I hear moments of Reinberger just rejoicing in his student in this concerto, and
yeah,
extremely personal for me because I know those backstories, and also having worked with you for the time that I've been in Vero, this is a wonderful personal relationship. Now we get to perform together.
yeah. I'm so looking forward to it.
Me too, very
It'll be
much.
really, really a lot of fun and a beautiful program. And I'm not only so grateful that you're playing and bringing this wonderful Parker Concerto to our audiences, but
Yeah,
as you said, you're also joining us for the end of Enigma, which, as many times as I've done Enigma, I've never done it with the
right.
organ at the end ever. Because
It's going to be cool.
who's gonna do that, right? I mean,
I'm going to do it. I'm going to
you
do it
need
with
the
you.
organ there. Yeah, it'll be great. So we have two concerts, April 10th, and well, three concerts. April 10th, we've got
Yep.
one concert, and April 11th, we've got two concerts.
Yep.
So do come and join us. I know, Andrew, you'll be there, but
I will.
I hope that everybody comes and takes advantage of hearing you. You're such an incredible musician, such an incredible organist, and it's
David,
going
I
to be
forgot to tell you an exciting thing,
yeah.
and I want everybody to hear this too. At the end, the last movement of the Parker Concerto, there is a cadenza. I will be improvising part of that cadenza at the end.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a This is something that is almost entirely lost amongst what seem to me to be all but organists.
correct. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree.
organists still have these improvisational chops,
Yes.
and the rest of us are like, what's that? It's like it's gone.
Yeah.
Like
So, what is wonderful about that is it won't be quite the same at each performance. So, if you want to hear the cadenza three different times, buy three tickets.
yep, do it. I can't wait.
Yeah,
It's
it's going
going
to
to be
be a lot
great
of
fun.
fun. Yes,
Well, thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you soon.
me too. David, you take care, and this has been great fun.
It's been a lot of fun. Bye bye.
Okay, take care.